Alright, what's going on? So as of right now, I plan to sort of call this video like a room tour video or a music room tour video or something to that effect. That's not necessarily true. My thing is, my music room, this room that I'm in right now, is not finished. Ideally would like to have like a couch in here and like a coffee table and shit, but I don't know how long I'm gonna live here. So I don't really want to go out and buy furniture if, you know, it's only going to be used for a few months before we move into someplace bigger. Basically, in my videos, you basically see the entirety of what's actually done in this room. CD shelf and then the records and shit like that you see. The only thing you can't see in these videos is two walls. This wall right here and that wall over there. But really, those are just posters and shit, so it's not that exciting. So basically, if I were to make a room tour anyway, the whole point would be me showing some of my favorite things in the room and sort of talking about them for a bit. And that's going to be what this is. This is just going to be like 20 of my favorite things that is in my music room. All of these things I'm going to show you have probably some type of small story behind it. If not, it's just something that I think is pretty cool and want to show you. And being that I'm going to try and show you 20 different things here, I guess I should probably get into it because I don't want this video to be too awfully long. The first thing I have here is this big-ass Baphomet statue. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this, just sort of hanging in the background of a lot of these videos that I make. I actually got this for my birthday. Maddie bought it for me when we were in Salem, Massachusetts at one of the Hex stores. There's two Hex stores. One is in Salem and the other one is in New Orleans. We've been to both of them and I have something from the New Orleans location that I'll show you in just a bit. Without a doubt, this is one of my favorite things in this room because it's just gorgeous, man. Besides the fact that homeboy is missing a couple fingers here, besides that, it's, you know, perfect. I love this thing. It's awesome. It was a little bit pricey, but I didn't pay for it, so. All right, next thing I'm gonna show you here is something I got in Japan. So this is a Daruma Doll. If you guys aren't familiar with what a Daruma Doll is, it's basically these little guys right here. They can be real big, they can be a lot smaller than this. I just thought this was a good size, one that would be easy to get home and shit. But basically you get them while their eyes are totally white. You're supposed to fill in one of the eyes when you set a goal for yourself and fill in the other eye when you complete said goal. I'm just gonna leave its eyes white because I have no goals or aspirations. But I love this thing, man. When I went to Japan, this was one of the things I was keeping an eye out because I wanted one so bad. I just think they look really fucking cool. And homeboy sort of sits over there by my record player. So, yep, I love this little guy. All right, so next thing here is something that I got in Iceland. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite things that I own. So this is a little Puffin, a little taxidermied Puffin. So before I ever went to Iceland, I knew a guy who went and he brought one of these home and I thought it was really fucking cool. And I wanted one, but I didn't really know where to get them at. And if I did a little bit of research online, I couldn't really find anything. But luckily, when I actually got there, these are a lot easier to find than you might think. These are basically sold in normal souvenir shops. They're a little bit expensive, but everything in Iceland is a little bit expensive. I love this little guy, man. There was all sorts of different like poses. Some of them had their wings open. Some of them are standing up bigger. Some of them are kneeling down more. Some of them had like fake fish in their mouth and shit. But, you know, I don't know, man. Something about this one right here, I really, really, truly loved. Yeah, just gorgeous. He's super soft too. I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, very nice. The next thing I have here is something else that I love an awful lot. This is a little necklace filled with blood, and this is actually Maddie's blood. This was from our very, very first anniversary in 2014. She had talked about this being something she wanted to do for a while, but basically we went to dinner and she showed me these empty vials. And the point was we were going to go home that night and we were going to fill them with our blood. It was pretty easy for her to fill hers with blood. She basically used a needle and pricked her fingers and, you know, basically squeezed the blood out like that. For me, that shit wasn't working. So I took a box cutter and I cut my wrist right there and I got way more blood than I needed. She had to actually do this twice. This is the second one. The first one, all the blood basically dried up and disappeared. This one has held up a lot better for being 3 years old now, so super fucking cool. I love this thing. Next thing I have here is something I got in Thailand, and I haven't found a place to put this yet, but I'm looking. So this is a wooden mask. You see these things all over Thailand, and I knew I wanted one before I even went to Thailand in the first place. I bought a small one and I had that for a couple of days, and then I saw this. So I bought this and gave the smaller one to my sister. But this thing is fucking killer, man. I absolutely adore it. It was made in Thailand, and I believe the only way to really classify what this is to call it a yaksha. I'm not certain that would be the correct classification of what this is, but if you look up yaksha on Google, then you see things that sort of look similar to this, but it looks like it's supposed to be a mixture between a snake and a bird. But it's fucking awesome, man, and I absolutely adore this thing. And like I said, I'm looking for somewhere to put it. Right, next up here is something else I bought in Japan. And I actually got this when I got the Daruma Doll, same place and everything. You guys have probably seen this hanging in the background of the last few videos that I've made. But this is a lantern, and outside in Japan, these things are fucking everywhere. And they represent all sorts of things. And unfortunately, I'm not sure what this one says. I just knew I wanted one regardless of what it said. So like you can see, these sides are different. So I'm not certain what this means, but in Japan you'll see a lot of these hanging outside stores and restaurants and shit like that. I believe the orange ones are supposed to be restaurant lanterns, so maybe this is just a more general lantern that sort of may mean a million different things. I'm honestly not certain. If any of you guys can read Japanese, hey man, please fucking let me know. But you can see it's pretty big, it's collapsible, and I actually have a red light bulb that hangs in this, as you've seen in previous videos. It's completely hollow, and I have a light bulb on a cord that hangs in there, and it just turns on and off. Super fucking cool. Alright, next thing here is something else that I truly adore. So this is a wine bottle that was sort of made into like a candle. You can see the wine bottle was basically painted like matte black, and I put a sticker on it that says "Layer Sweet Layer." You basically stick a candle on the top of it and burn it until the wax falls down the bottle. Now, I got this because I won a sort of online contest thing from one of my favorite artists in terms of making music, an artist by the name of Voltaire, who I've talked about before. I own a few of the CDs. Literally, one of the Voltaire albums is playing in my bedroom, I'm not kidding, 24/7. I put it in my CD player probably around last Thanksgiving, and it's been in there ever since. So literally I listen to that album every night. It's playing 24/7 because I never turn the CD player off. So literally every hour of every day I have Voltaire playing in my house, and he sent me this. So this is super fucking cool. Eternally grateful. Thanks, Voltaire. Alright, so here's another really cool thing that I'm super pleased to own. So this is a statue of, obviously, a very famous drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, the Vitruvian Man. I got this in Italy, obviously where the Vitruvian Man was drawn and where Leonardo da Vinci lived out his life. And I actually got this at a little store right outside of where Fontana di Trevi is, or the Trevi Fountain. The Trevi Fountain is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in person, and I got this basically right next door. So basically right when I saw this thing, I knew I wanted it, because I'm fascinated with the drawing, I'm fascinated with Leonardo da Vinci in general, and when I saw the statue, I knew I wanted it. And like I said, it was a bit expensive, but it was totally worth it, and I would do it again every day of the week. So yeah, super fucking cool. So this is another of one of my absolute favorite things that I've owned, and some of you guys may have seen this hanging in the background of some of my videos as well. This is a severed pig's head in a jar of formaldehyde. I got her from a horror movie convention about a year ago at this point, and when I bought it, it had these like silly red marble glass eyes in it, and I didn't like the eyes, so basically I took it home. I opened the lid on this thing, I stuck my hand in with a pair of tweezers, and I dug the eyes out of it. So not exactly how I saw that night going, but I'm glad I did, because it looks way cooler without the eyes. But I noticed over the last year, the formaldehyde started dropping, and it got to a point where it was actually below the eye. So I poured some water in this, like room temperature water bottle water, in this, and it made it a bit foggy, so I'm not really sure what a substitute for formaldehyde is, but pro tip, it's not water. So the next thing I have here is a little picture of Maddie, and I fucking adore this thing. So it's kind of hard to see, but this was taken in one of my favorite places on earth, the Smoky Mountains, which are actually pretty close to me now, but at the time, this was Maddie's first time seeing it. And she stood up on a little fence, and this was a candid picture, and I just really, really love it. So I got it printed out years later, and now I have it in a little frame, and yeah, probably one of my favorite pictures. So when I talked about that Baphomet earlier, I had mentioned that there was a second location of the Hex Witch store in New Orleans. And New Orleans is without a doubt my favorite city in the United States. But I got this there. I love the idea of voodoo and how it sort of loosely lived on in New Orleans. And, you know, to this day, people still practice voodoo. And in America, New Orleans is kind of like the breeding ground for shit like that. So I love it. I love this thing. It hangs on my wall, and he's one of my favorites, so real cool. Next up is something else that you guys have probably seen in the background of videos, and I sort of made a little video inside of the place I got this from in the very first vlog I ever made on this channel. So this is a little alien bust. And I love this thing so much, and the reason is because the circumstances in which I came into getting this are just so weird. Basically, we were driving from Las Vegas to California, and in the middle of the desert we found a little alien-themed jerky shop. And I'm not kidding when I say it was in the middle of the desert. So if you guys remember in that video, I showed little clips of the outside with like the car with like animatronic aliens and shit in it. And when I went inside, this was one of the first things that I saw. And there was no way I was leaving without it, just because, like I said, it was a weird set of circumstances that I even found the place anyways. But yeah, I love aliens. This thing is badass, and he will be forever watching over me. All right, next up here is another one of the coolest things that I have in this room. This is a little Volt Boy bobblehead. Obviously, you guys are all familiar with the Fallout franchise. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before, but I am not at all into video games. I don't ever fucking play anything. But if I do, it's either Fallout 3 or New Vegas. Fallout 3 is my favorite game ever. Not even really for any other reason besides nostalgia, because around the time that Fallout 3 came out, and when I first played it, it was in the middle of one of the best times of my entire life. So, I don't know, there's just a lot of reminiscing that goes on between me and Fallout 3, but I got this from my buddy Ryan when I was moving out of Florida. He gave this to me, and cool enough, he actually ended up moving up here about a year later. So yeah, hey Ryan. All right, so here's another weird one. This is a mask that I got in Mexico. Now, the reason that this is weird is because I have a very, very distinct memory of this thing breaking into like 4 pieces. Obviously you can tell that it has never been broken, but I remember this thing breaking. I remember this thing coming off. I remember this being in half. And I remember being very annoyed by that. But I don't remember what happened to it after that, and I never saw it. I hadn't seen this thing for like 10 years. And when I was moving out of Florida, I found it all in one piece. So I'm not really sure how that happened, but either way, I'm happy that, you know, I still have it. It's cool, it's a good memory. I've loved Mexico every time I've been, and yeah, cool. So here's another pretty weird thing, and I actually got this in Italy. So when Maddie and I were in Italy, if you guys remember, if you saw that vlog, we took a gondola ride in Venice, and it was a really, really memorable experience. Obviously, taking a gondola ride in Venice is something that a lot of people would love to do, and Maddie and I were lucky enough to do it. So we did that, and as we were leaving Venice, we had to stop and get gas. And in this gas station, we found this. So it's kind of weird to show off, but this is a wooden gondola with a few people in it. But what's cool about this is the fact that this gondola was modeled after one of the gondolas that we rode in. The sort of black boat, red interior with the gold horses on the side. It's really, really fucking cool. So you know, we saw this, and like I said, it was identical to the gondola we rode in a couple hours earlier. So after seeing it, man, we really wanted it. We're kind of a sucker for souvenirs and shit. You know, we have shit all over the place, but you know, they all have stories, and this is one of them. So I'm gonna have to sort of bend the rules here, because this actually doesn't stay in this room, but this is one of the coolest things that I own. So this is a bat in a frame. I really like taxidermy type shit. I don't know for sure if this qualifies as taxidermy. I assume that it would, but you can see it's basically a bat pinned to a velvet background. This hangs above our kitchen sink, and I really love this thing, man. I actually got this at the same place I got the pig head, but this was something that was a little less terrifying, but just as equally cool. So I really like this thing, and I'd like to get some more like framed bats and put them all together, because I like bats, I like these things, are badass. So I'll show another wet specimen here for those of you guys who are interested in shit like that. This is an octopus in a little globe here. You can see all its tentacles hanging around like that, and there's his face. The glare is kind of shitty, but his face is in there and his tentacles wrap all around. But it's pretty small, but I really love this thing. I like how all the tentacles wrap around and shit. I'd like to have a bigger one of these. Maybe like, you know, maybe like that big. And I know they exist, and I know that you can get them, but you know, stuff like this isn't exactly cheap, and it's not exactly easy to come by when you can't ship stuff like this in the mail. So yeah, but this is another one of my favorite things. I really like this little guy, and yeah, I look forward to getting some more wet specimen type shit in the future. All right, so coming up on the end here, we just got a few more things I want to show. But this is one of them. I got this for Christmas a few years ago, and it's pretty much been hanging up ever since. This is a Black Dahlia Murder coffin-shaped skateboard that is signed by... Fuck, I wish I had looked this up before. I think this is signed by the Deflorate lineup. Fuck, I don't really remember when a lot of the guys sort of left, but Bart was still in the band. Shannon was still in the band. Obviously Trevor and Brian, and fuck, I think this is the Deflorate lineup, but yeah, man, this thing is fucking awesome. But yeah, my mom got this for me for Christmas, I think in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So I've had this thing for a while, but like I said, you know, it's basically been hanging up in every room I've ever had since I got it. So yeah, I love this thing, super cool. Yeah, so this is one of the last things here, and this is gonna seem pretty silly, but I really like this thing. This is a little like Halloween spider ring, and I know this seems like a strange thing for me to show in this video, but I actually caught this at, and I caught it not really intentionally, but I caught this at Hell's Head Bash in 2015, the first time I saw Acid Witch. Basically Slasher Dave came out, and he had like one of those jack-o'-lantern buckets for Halloween candy, and it had candy and shit like that in it, and he basically was taking handfuls and just throwing it into the crowd. And I caught this, and this actually went into a little wooden coffin that Maddie and I had our wedding rings in when we got married. So this was in there with like the rings were sitting on top of like fake spider web. So this was in there. I know it seems like a silly, dumb little thing, but I don't know. I love this thing. And finally, I guess I'll make this the last thing that I show, because I think this is 20. This is a caricature that Maddie and I had done in New York City. This does have a date on it. September 1st of 2015. Hell's Head Bash started like 3 days after this. So that road trip was probably one of the greatest things I ever did. And I think for the rest of my life, it will be one of the greatest things I've ever done. For those of you who have been around a bit longer, you'll remember that Maddie and I had some time. It was right before we moved up to Kentucky from Florida, and we had a few weeks of vacation we wanted to spend at our work because we weren't going to get paid for it. So we took like 3 weeks off. We drove from Florida to Maine, saw pretty much everything in between, met a lot of great people. Then we drove from Maine to Cleveland, Ohio, and saw Hell's Head Bash. So those 3 weeks were probably arguably the best 3 weeks of my entire life. And this was kind of right at the sort of pinnacle, the apex of the whole trip. It was an amazing time, and this will forever be a memory of the fun we had. So super cool. All right, and that's it. I know this was weird. It was a bit different. Maybe some of you guys won't be into this. Maybe some of you guys will think it's the greatest shit I've ever made. But either way, all the shit I showed you means something to me. I like owning it all. It makes for good decoration, and some of them have some pretty cool stories behind them. So yeah, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If not, sorry. I'll be back to making vinyl videos soon. I just wanted to find a way to sort of diversify the content on this channel. So yeah, hope that you guys enjoyed that, and we'll be back soon. Later.
I'm so far along, but I don't wait for my end. I'm so down, the rain of God, last time the monsters still, if I begin to stand there, we still be right.